riding on to parade on Burmese, that she should ride in the phaeton. It was a carriage built in 1842 by the famous company of Barker & Co. in London for just £300 then. There are pictures of Queen Victoria having ridden in it in the middle of the last century. At the other end of the Mall, a procession of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. The foot guards present arms, and as the barouche turns on to parade, the mass bands will play the national anthem. The man who's responsible for making everything work, the parade commander, the field officer in brigade waiting, the commanding officer of the 2nd Battalion Grenadier Guards, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Aubrey Fletcher. A 4th generation Grenadier. He's wearing his grandfather's bearskin, which was specially made for him around the turn of the century, and carrying his sword. The massed mounted bands of the Household Cavalry, who just behind 4 troopers of the Blues and Royals have led the royal procession up the Mall. As they ride on, they'll play Aida by Verdi. Ivory mounted phaeton behind the 3 royal colonels, and behind them the sovereign standard of the Blues and Royals. The massed mounted bands will move along the approach road to take up a position at the far end, followed by the first 2 divisions of the sovereign's escort found by the Blues and Royals. Then Her Majesty the Queen with the 2 splendid greys drawing the phaeton. The postilion, the Queen's head coachman Stephen Matthews in full state postilion livery. So the Household Cavalry move along the approach road, and that's where they will remain for the duration of the parade until they're required to rank pass much later on. But Her Majesty turns left onto Horse Guards Parade, and she would be driven along behind guard number 6 round to in front of Horse Guards building. And all the members of the royal procession, as they go past the Queen's colour of the 2nd Battalion, will acknowledge it. Her Majesty wearing a brooch presented to her by the officers of the Grenadier Guards. The 3 royal colonels, Field Marshal His Royal Highness Duke of Kent on the far side, the Colonel of the Scots Guards, Field Marshal His Royal Highness the Prince Philip Duke of Edinburgh, Colonel of the Grenadier Guards in the middle, and on the near side, Colonel His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, from the Major General's office, watches the parade along with all her guests, many members of the royal family up there. A very busy time indeed it's been over the last few weeks for Her Majesty, but this an annual ceremony that she knows so well. The phaeton will draw up behind the dais, and as she steps up onto it, the field officer will give the orders for the royal salute, and the mass bands will play the national anthem. And in Green Park, 6 guns of the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery commence a 41-gun salute. Fired at 10-second intervals, it'll take 7 minutes to complete. Her Majesty, back in the phaeton, will now inspect the foot guards and the household cavalry. Initially to the slow march for the inspection, British folk song medley. Majesty now moves round to inspect the household cavalry to the Quick March Inkerman Company, written by another former director of music of the Grenadier Guards, Colonel Rodney Bashford. Led by the Brigade Major of the Household Division and 4 troopers of the Blues and Royals. Her Majesty followed by the 3 Royal Colonels, 1 missing this year. Prince John, the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, Colonel of the Irish Guards, cannot be away from his country because of a state visit there. And as they pass the sovereign standard of the Blues and Royals, they'll all acknowledge that. The inspection complete, Her Majesty returns to the dais, where she will remain for the rest of the parade. In the centre of the three royal colonels, the Duke of Edinburgh celebrated his 73rd birthday just a couple of days ago. And Major General Robert Corbett, the Major General commanding the Household Division, on his last parade after nearly 35 years in the army. He retires in a couple of weeks' time. Ahead of him, the new Colonel of the Coldstream Guards, Lieutenant General the Honourable Sir William Rouse, a serving officer. He's Quartermaster General, and it's a tradition of the Coldstream Guards to have professional soldiers as their colonels. Joining Her Majesty on the dais, General Sir Desmond Fitzpatrick on the left, Colonel of the Blues and Royals, the gold stick in his right hand. And on the left, Major General Lord Michael Fitzalan Howard, Colonel of the Life Guards with the white plume. Troop to the traditional march, Les Huguenots. quick troop to the quick march Machine Gun Guards by Maréchal. Leaves the mass bands, Lance Corporal Paul Woodley, to play the drummer's call. He won the battalion's bugle competition in April for the 4th time, so he carries a solid silver bugle. The drummers call the signal for the officers to take post and for an orderly to come and collect the pay stick from the regimental Sergeant Major Sam Swanwick. This is the only occasion when a warrant officer draws a sword, because he'll be collecting the colour and handing it to the ensign. Now the subaltern of the escort, Captain Charlie White-Thomas, takes command of the escort for this particular part of the parade, when the escort will advance forward to collect the colour and then march it through the ranks. They'll advance and left wheel to the quick march British Grenadiers, which is not because it's their march, that's coincidental. It's always played at this point because the right flank company of every regiment of the line used to be a Grenadier company. now searches for a little white marker 20 paces from the colour. Immaculately done. He stops right on the spot. He said that's always the bit that people notice most. So he prepares the escort to receive the colour.
Cavalry!
With the colour now in its care, the escort will present arms and the mass bands play the national anthem.
Escort to the colour! Present! Pipe!
The four guides and markers at the corners of the escort at the high port in symbolic protection of the escort as they presented arms. So now the subaltern will prepare the escort for the trooping of the colour through the ranks of the other 5 guards. There's another small change this year. Because there were only 6 guards last year, they tried a slight difference of the way that the escort got into the trooping, and they found that they were bumping into the massed bands. So they're resorting to how they used to do it, pretty much, when there were 8 guards there.
Escort to the colour! Change! Pipe!
Throughout the parade, you'll see the guardsmen changing arms, because with this modern short rifle, they can't rest it on the ground. It weighs 9 pounds.
Well advance! By the centre! Slow! March!
They advance to escort to the colour, and then as they approach number 6 guard, the rest of the foot guards will present arms, and the bands will play the Grenadier's slow march. The bands involved in their second spin wheel, a manoeuvre designed specifically for the mass bands of the Household Division. The bands used to be over 400 strong. They're a bit smaller now, but the wheel is still very difficult. No 2 spin wheels are exactly the same. Individuals are constantly adjusting, with some hurtling round the edge like nuvolari on the banking of Brooklands, while others on the inside are more tortoise-like, even stepping backwards and sideways as the formation changes. Then once through 90 degrees, half are facing one way and half the other. And then the signal from one of the directors of music, that half about turns, and the mass bands and corps of drums of Her Majesty's Guards Division have changed direction. This part of the ceremony is based on a very simple military requirement. When colours provided the rallying point for troops in the mist and confusion of battle, it was essential that they could recognise their own company or battalion flag. So regularly at the end of the day, the colours would be trooped through the ranks before being lodged in the battalion headquarters. Now a consecrated and cherished symbol of the heart of the regiment, the plain crimson silk emblazoned with 45 of the regiment's 77 battle honours represents nearly 340 years of dedicated and loyal service to King, Queen and country. The Guards Memorial. There's another much simpler memorial at the War Cemetery near Nijmegen, where many grenadiers lie buried. It says simply, "Their name liveth forevermore." Let's hope that not only are they never forgotten, but that neither are the harsh lessons of history that caused their untimely deaths. Major Oliver Bartram will now reassume command of the escort, and he'll order them to present arms to return the compliment to the rest of the parade.
Escort to the car! Present! Ha!
So with the trooping complete, it's now time for the march past by the foot guards in slow and quick time, and the field officer prepares them for that. Welcome relief coming up for the guardsmen of numbers 2 to 6 guards who've been stationary for over an hour. Really quite an ordeal in their tight tunics and heavy bearskin caps. Escort leading, the colour secure in their ranks. The column of crimson and black, slow march all the way round Horse Guards Parade. You can imagine what a fearsome sight they would have made when this was the battle formation. The slow march really not easy on a rough gravel surface. It's uneven, and keeping the line straight is not difficult. The important thing is to adjust slowly if they do start to wave a little bit. Prince Edward and the Duchess of Kent behind the Queen Mother, watching from the Major General's office. Colour moves out from behind the symbolic protection of the escort to lead the march past. Led by the field officer and the major of the parade. The escort and number 2 guard prepare to march past Her Majesty the Queen. And they'll do it to the regimental slow march Scipio, the march from the opera Scipione. sign, lowers the colour in salute to Her Majesty. Always a stirring moment for any battalion trooping its colour before Her Majesty and the eyes of the world. For the 2nd Battalion of the Grenadier Guards, as they face impending disbandment, an historic moment tinged with sadness, but executed with immense personal and collective pride. Number 3 Guard, K Company, the Scots Guards, the garb of old Gaul. The Irish Guards, let Erin remember. Finally, the aria Non puis André from Mozart's opera Figaro for the Coldstream Guards. The adjutant of the 2nd Battalion, Captain George Rock, watched by his 86-year-old father in a wheelchair at the front, recovering from a stroke. He was severely injured a month after D-Day as a troop leader with the 4th Battalion of the Grenadiers when a troop carrier next to him landed on his tank after hitting a mine. A wonderful moment for all of them, and we certainly wish him a speedy and full recovery. Beside Her Majesty for the slow march past, the field officer salutes, and he'll then trot across the parade to give the orders for the quick march. Accelerate smoothly from 65 paces a minute to 116. To the neutral quick march, Wadi al-Batin, written by the Grenadiers Director of Music, Major Philip Hills, to commemorate the battle honour awarded to the Grenadiers during the Gulf conflict. Wadi al-Batin is actually a rift in the desert landscape that runs north to south from Iraq to Saudi Arabia. concentration etched on their young faces. So for the last time on Horse Guards Parade, the 2nd Battalion Grenadier Guards prepare to march past their Colonel-in-Chief. In August 1914, the 2nd Battalion was the first to go to France and took part in the desperate last-ditch defence of Ypres. 4 months later, hardly a man was left. But reinforced, they would fight on, their spirit unbroken. The Escort today, as Nijmegen Company, will carry those traditions on into an uncertain and still volatile future. Many a stifled tear, I'm sure, among the hundreds of current and former Grenadiers and Guardsmen watching from the stands. As the models march past to their regimental quick march, the British Grenadiers. Quick march of the Scots Guards, Heelan Laddie. And for the Irish Guards, St. Patrick's Day. Finally, the quick march of the Coldstream Guards, Villanolo. Now the neutral quick march, the King's Guard, written in 1904 by J.H. Keith, a musician in the band of the Scots Guards. Marching like this was not just for ceremonial purposes. Before the days of armoured personnel carriers and 3-ton trucks, the army both marched into battle and from battle to battle. as for instance in northern Spain in 1808, when the 1st Regiment of Foot Guards took part in Sir John Moore's classic march and countermarch against Napoleon. Under terrible hardships, many of the tattered, footsore troops showed signs of collapse. But the 1st Foot Guards, with their splendid marching discipline, lost fewer men by sickness and desertion than any other unit in the army. Bands play quietly to allow the field officer to give the orders for the Foot Guards to turn back into line. Senior drum major Stan Jackson gives the order for the mass bands to move away, and they'll do it to the tune Galantia, played by the Corps of Drums. One band moves away, another marches on. The massed mounted bands of the Household Cavalry, led by their Director of Music, Major Bob Garrity, the Director of Music of the Blues and Royals, and the 2 drum horses, Belisarius on the left and Constantine on the right. They ride on to the Grand March from Bellini's opera Norma. On the left of the picture was on the Queen's birthday parade for the first time back in 1985. A very experienced drum horse, ridden by Staff Corporal Timothy Francis. But Constantine, named after the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, making his debut on this parade. The sovereign standard of the Blues and Royals. present arms to the Household Cavalry. Walk march of the Blues and Royals as the field officer of the escort, Major Nick Lane Fox, followed by the escort commander and the standard bearer, Squadron Corps Major Gary Dunkley, who lowers the sovereign standard to Her Majesty. Divisions 1 and 2, the Blues and Royals. After the red plumes and blue tunics of the Blues and Royals, the white plumes and the scarlet tunics of the Lifeguards. As the Foot Guards shoulder arms, the mass-mounted bands will play a short burst of the Royals, those ceremonial axes of the farriers at the rear. This is the old walk march of the Royal Dragoons. At the end of this, the trumpeter, Trumpet Major Hayward, will play a trot call. A particularly senior trumpeter, one of the state trumpeters, in fact. Two traditional cavalry trots, Money Musk and Anonymous. Among the troopers today in the Blues and Royals is Trooper Bullman, who started life in the army as a para. He had over 400 jumps with the Red Devils, the parachute regiment's display team, then decided to follow in his father's footsteps. Went on the 5-month equitation course with the Household Cavalry, and he joined the mounted regiment at Knightsbridge in February. Typical of many of these men, they join with no riding skills at all, and after the 5-month course, they're on duty with the Household Cavalry Regiment at Knightsbridge. Their chargers and horses superbly looked after. Most of the black horses come from Ireland. Each year they're given a name beginning with the letter of the alphabet for that year. This year it's T. Names like Tobruk, Thor, Tangier and Thunderbolt on parade today. Also amongst them is the new Sefton, who actually was part of last year's intake, but has taken a year and a half to pass his test, so to speak. He's been ridden by a riding instructor because he's still apparently quite difficult. And so they trot past to their regimental trot, the Keel Row. massed mounted bands of the Household Division pay their own salute to Her Majesty. The drummers cross their drumsticks, the magnificent drum horses carrying those drums, kettle drums of solid silver, 60 pounds each they were. The Blues were given theirs by George III in 1805 and the Lifeguards by William IV in 1831. Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, who reviewed the parade at the second rehearsal last week. Everyone got very wet then, it absolutely chucked it down. Meanwhile, in the Mall, this is the Queen Mother's procession. And once she is clear of the approach road, the signal will be given that all is clear for the Queen's procession to set off. The field officer will ride up to Her Majesty the Queen to ask permission to ride off parade.
Her Majesty's Guards are ready to march off.
Garrison Sergeant Major, 6 foot 6 inches tall, Perry Mason, who'll salute when all is clear in the Mall for the procession to set off. There, the phaeton has arrived in front of the dais. Her Majesty will get into it. There is the signal. The march back to Buckingham Palace is to the Standard of St. George, another great march by Kenneth Alford. Senior drum major Stan Jackson, a hugely respected and admired man who's been given a unique honour. He's to become the first warrant officer class 1, the equivalent of a regimental sergeant major, and will go up to the infantry training battalion at Catterick as the senior drum major of the British Army at the beginning of next year. so they all march back to Buckingham Palace, where they will once again march past the Queen, which will signal the end of the parade for most of them, apart from some men of the escort, who will then go on to find the Queen's Guard outside the royal palaces. So the Queen's colour of the 2nd Battalion Grenadier Guards leads the Foot Guards off parade. To quote from the regimental history, rigid attention to detail, flawless perfection of uniform and equipment, and a discipline of steel with a hard school in which the tempered metal of the regiment was made for the service of the state. Yet running through that tradition of discipline, of harsh punishments, of undeviating rule, ran a vein of poetry, of humour, of loyalty to comrade, of sense of belonging to something greater than any individual, something undying and profound. Those are the qualities that Nijmegen Company will enjoy when the models go into suspended animation on the 5th of November. Once Her Majesty is back at the palace, the royal family will appear on the balcony to watch the Royal Air Force's birthday salute. Already forming up in the skies over the Essex coastline and the Thames estuary, 16 Tornado fighters in close formation. With a noble swagger, the massed bands fill the mall with the sounds of brass, under the direction of their Senior Director of Music, Lieutenant Colonel David Price, Director of Music of the Scots Guards. These superb musicians will be appearing this year at the Royal Tournament, the first time that the mass bands of the Household Division will have played there since 1908. The mass band's right wheel to take up a position in front of Canada Gate, to leave the massed mounted bands of the Household Division to play the music for the final rank past. He'll be on parade in 20 years' time. Watching from the balcony at the front of Buckingham Palace, looking down on this scene. And the men who, a little earlier this morning, fired the 41-gun salute, the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, under the command of their officer commanding, Major Mark Houghton. the artillery's guns are their colours, so they will be saluted as they likewise salute Her Majesty. These impressive gun and limbers weigh 1.5 tons, and including the team of 6 horses, they're 54 feet long. They have no brakes, it's the horses that provide the brakes. Watching them going into action, as you can see them when they fire those salutes in Hyde Park, is the most dramatic sight. And a final salute from the massed mounted bands of the Household Cavalry and Major Bob Garrity. Princess Michael up on the balcony with Prince Edward, watching as the field officer also takes his final leave from Her Majesty. The huge royal standard flutters above Buckingham Palace as the crowds now are allowed to come forward right up against the palace rails to have a close look as the royal family all come out onto the balcony ready for the flypast by the Royal Air Force. They peer down the Mall, searching for the flypast, and here they come. 16 Tornado F3s from numbers 11 and 25 squadrons at RAF Leaming in Yorkshire, led by the station commander, Group Captain Phil Rosa. A diamond of 4 boxes, the RAF's fighter interceptor variant, the Panavia swing-wing multi-role combat aircraft. They roar over central London at 360 knots, 1,000 feet above the ground. The Royal Air Force says, "Happy birthday, Your Majesty." So, with a wave and a smile, their Majesties take their leave at the end of another Queen's birthday parade. I'm sure Her Majesty would agree with the words of the late Harold Macmillan. He said, "It's a great thing at some time in your life to be associated with something which is quite first class." That is precisely how I feel about the Guards.